found the best way to learn software is actually just to get on with the project. So I've outlined, it's just some simple cups here. So here we've got whatever we were working on, possibly want to save this drawing. So File, Save As, and I'm going to put it on the desktop and give it a name. Drawing 01 and save it. And that's obviously saved as a Blender file. Now I can start a new file. So File, New, General. And we're back to the default screen. Now for the cups, I'm not going to work with a cube. I'm going to go straight into a cylinder, and I know there's a preformed cylinder. So I want to get rid of everything here. So rather than selecting wherever the light is, I can just go A for all, so all three are selected, X for delete, and press delete. Okay. So now I go Add, Mesh, Cylinder, and there we have a basic shape to start with. And I find this is a good way, under Add is a range of sort of shapes you can work with. We've seen the cube, the cylinder, and then there's some spheres as around. So if you're designing objects, it's often a good idea to try and think of kind of what the basic shape is, and then you start with a pre-made form like this. Right, so now obviously we're working here in virtual reality. What size, how does this relate to real world size? Because we want to model a cup that will then get printed on the 3D printer, at a certain size. So I want to know the dimensions, and so I press key N. I remember that is N for numbers, and as long as the on the items here, you get dimensions, and this is in millimeters, so although it's got M, these are the equivalent of millimeters. So we've got a cylinder of 2 millimeter by 2 millimeter by 2 millimeter. Now I know that cups of about 90 millimeters, 9 centimeter across, and 9 centimeter, and about 11 centimeters high, or 110 millimeters, makes for a good size cup. Okay, so there's my base form. But now it doesn't have to be, but I like to sort of work such as you can see at the moment, it's sort of floating in the middle of my work surface. So I will go numpad 3, so I'm looking straight at it, and switch on the move tool, and then I can move it up and put it kind of on my work surface. Okay. Now the next thing is I want to start modeling this in some way, change its shape, but it's selected, and I can see that by the orange, but it's just selected all over. I want to edit this in some way, so I've got to go into edit mode. This is the object mode or the world view mode. And if you click down just up here on the left, you can see then there's an edit mode. So I can click into edit mode. Now the shortcut for moving between edit mode and object mode is tab. So you can see it's gone back to object mode, press tab, I'm into edit mode. Right, now each little point is highlighted. And if I select one of those with the left, click G for grab, I can then actually start moving and editing this item. I'm going to undo that, Control Z. So for my cup, I actually want the base to be a little bit narrower than the top. So how can I scale the base? The best way is if I press down Alt, and I just know this, Alt, and then left click the bottom on the bottom line, it then selects that line all the way around. Okay. Had I gone Alt and clicked on a vertical line, it would then only on the vertical, right? So go back to the bottom, and then we were scaling the cube in the other video. We can scale this as well. S for scale, and then I'll just slowly scale it in. At the moment I'm in perspective view that, as I say, I find a little bit misconceiving that, although it plays funny things with your eyes, I think that gives a better, when it's in orthographic mode, it gives you a better representation of the proportion between top and bottom. I'm going to scale just a little bit more. Alright, there we go. Now I want to put more detail onto the surface of my cup, but I can't bend a straight line. I've actually got to somehow put more detail into this, cut it up into more of a mesh, put more of these little dots, intersecting dots on here. So the way to do that is, once you're in edit mode, you'll suddenly find you've got a whole lot more tools down the side here. And this tool here is called Loop Cut. So we click on Loop Cut and then move it across the form. Didn't select for some reason, and move it across the form. It now draws a line across everywhere. So we've now sort of added some dots there, but I want a whole series of dots. So if I come down the bottom here, until I do something else, this sort of parameters is always referenced. Whatever your last click was is sitting down the bottom here. So I can go into Loop Cut and then increase the number of loop cuts. And what I'm looking for is quite a sort of square shape here, because it's quite, so I'm just getting out a loop cut there, back to my selecting box, just so that I'm not getting the funny lines. It's good practice whenever you're modeling to try and keep to a sort of a square. If you've got oblongs and then you do a bit of scaling, then you can start getting really odd or weird sort of planes to your model. Whereas if you subdivide this, if you go into more detail, you'll keep getting the square shape. Anyway, so there we are. We've got now my cup with more definition in it. So if I accept that, now that I can actually start G for grab, I could start, sort of changing the surface of my cup like that. But I also want to try and use the power of the computer as much as possible. So I know that there's some more tools that I can use to sort of give me texture onto my cup. So I'm just going to undo those. Control Z was undo. Right. Now also, this is going to be my standard cup. So I think what I'm going to do is copy this, or make a couple of copies of it. So I'll go back into object mode. And then possibly looking just straight on at it. So that was numpad 1, or I could have gone over here. So what are we, Y, X, doesn't matter which one. And it's Shift D would have copied that and press Enter. Now over here you can see I've got my original cylinder and I've got another one. Then I can move that off to the side, reselect this one and do that again. Shift D, Enter, and move that off to the side. So I've now got 3 copies of it. So I'm going to work on the first one, so I select that, left click, and zoom in a little bit on this guy. Now I want to edit it, put a bit of texture on it. So object mode, click on that to go into edit mode. Alright, tab could have also done that, in and out with tab. And I know there's a tool up here that is select and select random. So you can see only the cup that is in edit mode is selected. You can only work on that cup. You'd have to go back into object mode and then select one of the other cups to work on the other cup. Alright, so that's done a random select wherever it's orange is selected. So now if I hit scale, I can deform and start giving texture to my cup. right? All really nice. The only trouble is that I've also kind of extended upwards, and I know that when I get to my 3D printer, I won't be able to kind of print these negative shapes, and this top rim here, if you wanted to try a drink out of that, would be rather ugly. So I'm going to undo that, Control Z, and now I'm going to scale, but not in the Z direction, only in the X, Y, the horizontal directions. So now what I do is, again, it's S for scale, as before, but now if I go Shift Z, it means not in the Z direction. If I went Z only, it would only be in the Z direction, or in the X or Y Z direction. But if you put a shift before, it means kind of negative Z. So you can see now I've got green and pink or green and red lines, the directions that it will scale in, and now it's not growing upwards and going downwards. So, that's now much more printable, and I might be happy with that. But again, I just think, if this is going to be a drinking vessel, some of these spikes won't be very nice to drink out of. So I want to try and retain the circle at the top and the bottom. So Control Z, I've got to think through how I can do this. And from past experience, I know there's another trick to selecting all of the bottom ones, all of the top ones. We did that just now, but I don't want to lose my random select. So I hold down Shift for multiple selection, press down Alt, and click just on the bottom line, and now that's collected everything down the bottom. Holding it down, and I can collect everything at the top. Okay, so now I've got a selection, but it's not these ones that I want to scale and give texture, it's the black ones I want to give texture to. I want the orange to remain just where it is. So what I want to do is invert my selection. And again, I know that there's some key shortcuts to that, so hold down Control and then I. Control I, and we've now inverted the selection. So now when I go scale, Shift Z, because I still don't really want it to go into the Z direction. I can put texture on, but I'm not distorting the top and distorting the bottom because they haven't been selected. Right, now I still want this to be a little bit further up, I think. So Alt again, I'm going to select the whole of that band. Using the Move tool, it just is easier. I can then pull that up as much as I want and scale that just to bring it out a little bit. Okay, so these are all moves we've been doing. Again, I think I do prefer the orthographic view. And I'm going to do similar with the base. You might be happy with your base, but I'm going to change my base a little bit in a similar manner. So Alt to select, left click, scale it out a little bit, just sort of improve the form and pull it down, just so there's a bit of distance between the base and the top. Actually, I think I might raise this one up a little bit more. Okay, and tab, go back into my object mode. There's my cup. I could select that to print. Now I do just want to keep all my cups sort of the same sort of size, so I will go back to the scaling. So that was N for numbers, and this comes up with the size, the dimensions. I'm not too worried about the width of it, but I think the height I'm going to keep to 11 centimeters or 110 millimeters. So there's that cup there. Okay, I'm going to work on this one a little bit. So select the cup in object mode and then go into edit mode because I want to edit that. Now again, I know there's another selection mode here that is select, it's checker deselect. So what I want to do is I'm in edit mode, A for all, press A, and it has selected all of it. And now select, checker deselect, and it's kind of selected every second one. And now you can see in this panel, that is your kind of properties panel on each movement. If I go on to do something else, you'll find that this will disappear. So you've got to get it in the right order. I can actually change the number as to how much it deselects and at what point. So you can play around with that, but I'm going to, for now, stick to this one. And so, as I did with that pattern, I could scale it and not up into the Z, but the top goes again. So I'll repeat and do the same again. So Control Z to undo that. Hold down the Shift to add to the selection. Hold down the Alt to get the whole ring. And that does the ring, and that does the ring. Right, but it's not, I don't want to scale these ones, it's the black ones I want to actually do. So I've got to invert the selection. So Control I, exactly the same I was doing just now, and now scale, not in the Z direction, Shift and Z. Okay, so I've now got that repeat pattern everywhere. And once again, I'm going to just pull this up a little bit and scale it. Is that still round? Yeah, it's still round, right? And scale it. Okay. But my numbers are not here. I want to make this shorter. You'll find that the dimensions is only visible in the object mode. Okay. So I wanted to make this one the same size as that one, so I went into object mode, and then the dimensions comes back again, and so in the Z I want it to be 110. Okay, so just moving it to the middle. So I want to just save my Blender file, save as, putting it on my desktop, call it cups, and save. But now, if I want to print these, I need to export them as a different file type. You can't print from a Blender file, you need to print from what we call the STL file. So let's select the middle one, and we go File, Export, STL. Okay, so it wasn't save as, down to export. There is an import, export, and it's the STL file type that we want. It should, I think, go back to the same place. It tends to give the same name. But now I've got 3 cups, so I'm going to call cups 01 desktop. And I'm ready to export, but I also must just click on the selection only. If I hadn't gone selection only, all 3 cups will be saved as STL files, and that becomes a bit problematic later on when when you're trying to prepare your drawing for the printer. You'll end up with 3 drawings in the next piece of software rather than just 1 drawing. So we just want the 1 cup at the moment, so it's selected only, and export STL. Okay. Now I can do exactly the same with this cup. The only trouble is, again, in the next piece of software, although the software places the cup or the object sort of on the build plate, it'll place it out from the center point in the position that this is at the moment. So it's good practice to be actually exporting all your models when they are sitting in the middle, across the green and red lines. So up here we're back in location, all right, so that's the numbers in, on, off, and we're in object mode. Up here is the location, and it's in the Z direction, it's still kind of in the 0, but in the Y direction, it has come out from the middle point by that distance. So if we just put a 0 there, it's now sitting right in the middle. And as in Photoshop, you can sort of switch on and switch off what you actually see. So which one are we looking for? We're not looking for that one. That's the one we want to save. You can do this however you want, but I'm really just kind of showing you what's possible. It's highlighted orange, File, Export, STL. I've already got one cup there, so it's warning me that it's the same name, so I give a different name to the second cup. That should still be ticked if I haven't started a new file. Selection only, Export STL.